Oftentimes it's hard just having a process outlined to you to tell you to pick it up and follow through. In fact, I do that just so you understand the steps we're going to take. But what will clearly be helpful is to consider a practical example, and then after I'm going to actually give you some examples, asking you to do it on your own as an exercise. But the first one I want to do is let's consider a moral problem. In fact, we're going to consider a problem in applied ethics. Now, let me warn you right up front. It's going to be a controversial problem, and it's going to have to do with abortion, but please do not do what happened to me in class just this week. That is, in the face-to-face class, please do not take a position and get all nervous about abortion. I know oftentimes it's a very difficult issue. Some people in the class have had to make decisions like this, and maybe they did not make it in a way. Our goal is not to solve the question of abortion, the morality of abortion, but rather it's to understand the method of reconstructing arguments and how that helps us get closer to finding the truth in the situation following our methodology. Okay, now it's a pretty controversial topic, abortion, and the first thing that's kind of tough is to figure out exactly what it is that's being asserted. I had a long discussion in class today. We've been talking about we talked about Planned Parenthood and there's a political controversy between Republicans and Democrats on the issue, and the question had to do with, well, what does it have to do with abortion? It was a whole debate, and I was trying to stay away from that, but I was trying to make it a little bit simpler. And I think one of the problems in the political context is people aren't clear what they're talking about. Not that I'm sure that would resolve the problems, but it would certainly make for a more reasonable discussion. Okay, but we now know that there are people who are opposed to abortion. And sometimes they're in front of abortion clinics protesting. And in fact, when they're busy protesting, you might hear something like this going on in front of the abortion clinic. Somebody's protesting outside the abortion clinic, and they shout. Maybe they have a chant. If you want to make a more poetic chant, do that on your own time. They say, abortion kills a human being, therefore it's wrong. Now, chants aren't really arguments, but I think embedded in this is an argument, and it's an argument for a certain moral position about abortion. So what we need to do is apply our methodology. Okay, and what we're going to do is, we're going to go back and look at the slides. I hope you took notes on this, but we're going to go back and take a look at where reconstructing the argument fits in and the steps that we're going to take. Remember, in analyzing the argument that's embedded there, there are two steps. The first one we have to do is reconstruct the argument. So we're going to have to have number of premises and conclusions. Then we're going to evaluate the argument. And since we're going to reconstruct the argument, step one, identify the conclusions. The conclusion. Okay, so let's take a look and move forward and figure out what the conclusion is. So how should we reconstruct this argument? Well, what do you guys think the conclusion is? I think we have a pretty big hint. There's a therefore in it, which is why it probably doesn't make a good chant for protesting. Therefore, it is wrong. What is wrong? Abortion is wrong, right? Okay, and so the conclusion is abortion is morally wrong. Should have written that down first. Okay. And the other statement is a premise. Abortion kills a human being, therefore it is wrong. Okay, so we have the premise, we have the conclusion, so now we have reconstructed the argument. Okay, now we're going to evaluate the argument. And when we're evaluating the argument, especially since we're still trying to refine a reconstruction here, the first thing I'm going to say is, let's look at the logic. And I want you, after this, I want you to look at this carefully and tell me, is this a valid inference? Does the claim that abortion kills a human being logically entail that abortion is morally wrong? I want you to stop the recording a second, think about it, and you come up with your answer. Well, did you think the logic was good? The logic was bad. And remember, we're not talking logic and common sense. We're talking about the relationship between the premises and the conclusion. That is, necessarily, if the premises are true, the conclusion is also true. And at least I'm going to suggest that the inference is not valid. From the fact that something kills a human being doesn't make it morally wrong. Can you think of an example about why that would be the case? Stop again. Think about it. Why would it be the case that killing a human being doesn't make something more necessarily morally wrong? But that's a bad inference. Okay, if you've decided and you're back, here's at least my take on it. Suppose that somebody has a gun to your head and is about to shoot you in the head and do some serious damage to you. And suppose they just happen to be standing on a metal floor, a metal part of the floor that has electrodes on it, and you have a button. And the only thing you can do to stop this person from killing you or from inflicting tremendous bodily harm is by pressing the button and killing the person. That's something we call self-defense. So from the fact that abortion kills a human being, it's not clear that this follows. But before we even go into my example, the example that I was giving you, let's think about it. The argument that we've just reconstructed is not logically valid, right? However, I think we can adjust the premises, that is, add a missing premise. We identified the premise, add an implied premise. Step number 3. That's going to make the argument valid. And here, we're added as number 1. Any act that kills a human being is morally wrong. Abortion is an act that kills a human being, therefore abortion is morally wrong. So notice, first, we reconstructed an argument, just had one premise and one conclusion, and we noticed that the logic was bad. But in general, we don't want to tell people that their logic is horrible, that it doesn't work, but rather we're going to use what I call this principle of charity. We're going to at least try to make the argument valid, and it was easy enough. We added a premise before that first premise, that is, any act that kills a human being is morally wrong. Abortion is an act that kills a human being, therefore abortion is morally wrong. Okay, is that argument, remember we're talking about that specific argument, this one, that version of the argument, not that one, different argument. Remember, we talk about the reconstructed version. Is that argument, is the logic good? And I'm going to suggest, yeah, the logic's good. We add that premise to make the logical connection between number 2 and number 3. That is, 1 and 2 do entail number 3. Okay, so now we have followed the methodology to this point. That is, we added a premise, we followed that principle of charity, the fourth thing. Now, is this argument a good one? And as I suggested before, The logic is good, but maybe there's a problem with number one. That is, it says any act that kills a human being is morally wrong. How about defending your life? Is it morally wrong to kill a human being then? Are you required to give up your life? Now, some people take a very strong position on it and say that they can't take another person's life no matter what. That is, they'd have to sacrifice. But I think in general, most of us think that that's a pretty compelling reason for thinking that that first premise is false. Okay, so let's assume that's right. Can we get a better argument out of that? Well, we see any act that kills a human being is morally wrong. We said it doesn't account for acts of self-defense. However, maybe we can change that first premise so that it will accommodate it. What is wrong in the case of somebody defending themselves? Why is it okay to kill a human being in that case? And if you think about it for a second. You can stop the recording if you want. Well, the problem is that the person is threatening you, and you might put it this way, that the person is not innocent. So that it's not the case that any act that kills a human being is morally wrong, but maybe something that'll work better, a principle that'll work better for our argument here to defend, it'll make a better argument, a better case for the claim that abortion is morally wrong. That is, any act that kills an innocent human being is morally wrong. So we're going to go back and we are going to change. You couldn't see where I was pointing with my finger. We're going to change that first premise and right over here add an innocent human being to it. Okay. Now, any act that kills an innocent human being is morally wrong. Abortion is an act that kills a human being. Therefore, abortion is moral. But wait a second. We got to change more things, right? Because now, if we just made that one change, we wouldn't have a good. The argument, the logic of the argument wouldn't be good. But we have to make it any act that kills an innocent human being is morally wrong, and abortion is an act that kills an innocent human being. Okay, so what we'll end up is, to make the argument as strong as possible, we're using this principle of charity. That is, when you reconstruct an argument, try to make it valid and try to have premises that are reasonable. Okay, now, it's not quite that simple because we have now the more sophisticated version, right? We actually took two steps. That is, we added any act that kills an innocent human being, sorry about that, kills an innocent human being abortion is an act that kills an innocent human being. I switched it around in this slide. All acts involving the killing of an innocent human being are morally wrong. So that conclusion does follow. Logically. Is it an argument? Is the argument good? Well, you can see my comment is it's still pretty flimsy. Why do you think this argument's pretty flimsy? Stop it and think about it. Well, let's look at number one, or the new number one now. Abortion is the act of killing an innocent human being. Is that correct? Is abortion the killing of a human being at all? And I think it doesn't matter which side you're on this issue. A fetus is not a human being. There's a lot of controversy among the two sides of the debate whether abortion is morally wrong or not, but the people who defend this side of it, I think can easily concede and should concede that abortion doesn't kill any human beings. It kills a fetus, or it kills a baby being developed. So again, in reconstructing the argument, and we're going to kind of leave it here, but in reconstructing the argument, there's still more steps to take to get to an even better version. And remember, if we're trying to decide if abortion is morally wrong, we want to look at this argument. Let's say we think it's okay. It doesn't matter if we think it's okay or not. If we're trying to decide about abortion, we got to consider the best argument on either side. In this case, the one side that we're looking at, among those who think that abortion is morally wrong. And there's a lot more to be said from it. And please, don't come to any conclusion about abortion or what my position is on abortion. The point of this example was to show the practical value of reconstructing arguments and how it helps you resolve moral problems.